Welcome to the AI+HI project, coming to you from SHRM 25, SHRM's annual conference in San Diego this year. I'm Alex Alonso, SHRM's Chief Data and Analytics Officer. Thanks for joining us. For this episode, we're exploring how AI can address technology gaps for deskless workers and their impact on engagement, productivity, and retention. Deskless workers, such as retail associates, delivery drivers, healthcare staff, and manufacturing employees, make up over 80% of the global workforce, or approximately 2.7 billion people in this world today. Yet many lack access to basic digital tools like email or a PC. This leaves them at a significant disadvantage in today's AI-driven workplace. Our guest today is Jeremy Jacobs, CEO of Undesked, whose work and presentation here at SHRM 25 focuses on transforming the deskless experience through innovative solutions and ensuring frontline teams are no longer left behind. Jeremy, welcome to the AI+HI project.
Oh, great to be here, Alex. Great to be at SHRM 25. It's been an excellent conference so far.
To kick us off here, I really appreciate the fact that you're here. Deskless workers is something that my research team, I lead the thought leadership team at SHRM. They are very enthralled by this work. They don't want that 80% of the workforce to be left behind, right? And we see what a huge dynamic and what a multiplier that is. What inspired you to take on this work?
Well, I mean, it's one of the biggest markets there is, 80% of the workforce. And, if you walk the show floor out here on SHRM, I would argue that the vast majority of the booths are focused on the other 20%. They're focused on the desk workers. And so no one was really tackling these challenges. And, I walk into factories, I walk into construction sites, I walk into utility companies, healthcare, so on and so forth. They just don't have the same tools that anyone else has. They haven't been given the same opportunities. And so they were overlooked, and people were under delivering to provide them resources. And so I felt somebody needed to.
Why do you think they are overlooked? That's a great point. Why do you think they're overlooked?
Because the challenges, there are a couple reasons. One, the challenges are extremely difficult. A lot of times when people build tools, they build tools to make money, right? That's why you enter the software industry, the hardware industry, you build tools to make money. So you're looking for easier problems to solve that a lot of people have. In a production environment, for example, it's hard to even understand what all those challenges are. And they're so integrated. There's so many different departments that touch each other: HR, safety, maintenance, operations, so on and so forth. So number ones are overlooked. Number two, to put it bluntly, these workers aren't generally the best paid workers. And so you don't generally give your best resources to your lower wage workers. So they get overlooked for that reason, a whole lot. And then lastly, because, you walk into a lot of these environments, why do you do it that way? Well, because that's the way we've always done it. We're in the tech industry and in other industries where you have a lot of desk workers. That's not the mantra. Why do we do it this way? Because we've always done it that way. You're looking for change. But in these type of environments, we've been running these hotels this way forever. We've been running this hospital this way forever, this factory this way forever. So there's just not as much excitement to create change, I think, is a big component of it.
Yeah. I in a prior life, so I'm an organizational psychologist by training, and in a prior life, I worked with a federal think tank that looked specifically at kind of programs that you could build in to prevent technology gaps, but also to mitigate the risks associated with what you're describing, that people who are just left behind because of the context or the situational context of their workplace, right? And it strikes me, what kind of technology gaps are you seeing really arising with this deskless worker community, more than just the gaps? Which ones are the biggest ones and which ones are the smallest?
But, to kind of answer that question, I think you got to break deskless workers into two categories. And first off, to kind of go back to the previous question, because it ties into this one, if you look at a Google chart of the search terms for frontline or deskless workforces, it was essentially non-existent just a few years ago. This is a new term, sort of like AI, it's just become on the front line. So people are beginning to look at that. But I believe if you're going to answer the question of, what are these gaps, which is the question, right? I think it's different for different classes or different tiers of deskless workplaces. So let me give you an example of what I mean. So if we look at hospitality, retail, and food service, those environments are deskless. You need to be able to give people job assignments and things like that, but they're not unsafe environments. If you look at, a different tier of deskless workforces like manufacturing, construction, utility workers. Not only are they deskless, but now they're in extremely interesting environments where safety is also a massive concern. A lineman can electrocute himself. Person in the factory, they lose limbs and things like that. Not a lot of people working at McDonald's, I would say, has lost a limb, right? Or working in retail. And so there's different tiers. So these gaps are different, really, depending on which tier you're talking about. If we talk about the biggest, most dangerous tier, which is manufacturing, utility, places like that, the gaps are big. One of the biggest technology gaps is the fact that none of these systems are connected. Safety is not connected to maintenance. Maintenance is not connected back to analytics to tell us what needs to be done to create a feedback loop. In retail, it's, in banks and in hospitals and things like that, it's a little different. Most of those gaps are communication related. Less automation and more communication. They just need to more effectively communicate with people.
Walk me through examples, right? Talk to me a little bit about some examples where you're seeing that, let's say manufacturing, right?
Sure.
An example,
Yeah, great example.
because I myself have been
My favorite.
around. Yeah, I'm a favorite of it. It's one of my favorites too. At SHRM, it's the industry that we study more than any other. And one of the things that strikes me is we look specifically at how it is that the experience might differ from one part of the manufacturing sphere all the way to the other, right? I look at having worked with factories in a variety of enterprises, the kind that do corrugated card boxes or cardboard boxes, or the kind that actually make the machines to make the boxes, like the Barry Waymillers of the world, as an example, right? And it's fascinating because they're so tech rich in that manufacturing space, but in that same factory, you'll then have a machinist who doesn't even look anywhere near at some form of technology, right? They may work with a lathe, they may work with 3D printing and those types of things, but they're not necessarily doing the kind of things that you would think are heavy tech. And it always, I find it fascinating that you have under that same roof, you have people who are as tech heavy as can be,
Engineers, yeah.
and then at the same time have people who are not and get almost no exposure to it.
And you got it. So you just separated it out. And manufacturing is the most interesting example of them. So you got an engineering team that builds some of the most sophisticated machines to do some of the most sophisticated things. And then you have the operators. The engineers are desk workers, just so we're clear. And the operators are deskless. And so they suffer from three things usually. First off is communication. How do you communicate with a worker that doesn't have email? How do you give them job assignments? How do you get feedback from them? How do you communicate with them? And so one of the things we see that we've implemented is kiosks so that they can check a kiosk for job assignments. You can use text messaging, things like that. The second major gap to categorize it is really driven around automation. And automation starts with getting rid of the analog stuff. So you walk in a factory, it's got a $3 million machine that makes whatever the widget is, but they've still got a paper checklist over here on the clipboard. And somebody's signing off that they inspected the machine. Well, that's a non-starter, right? We can't even begin to implement AI in this process until we get rid of analog. We can't even begin to implement automation. And so automation is lacking. I'll give you my favorite example. If someone's at a machine and there's a near miss, they almost get hurt. Well, 9 times out of 10, you would like maintenance to go out and inspect that. Like, what happened? Was the guardrail loose? Do we need to put a basket over this cutting thing before someone gets hurt? But if you're analog, or even if you're not analog and you're digital, generally those systems are siloed. So they don't talk to each other. They don't communicate. Your near miss doesn't trigger, AI doesn't trigger a maintenance request to send someone out. So that's thing number 2. So again, communication, automation, and the third thing is resource sharing. You walk out on these factories with a $3 million machine, there's no tablet there in most cases to tell them how to run this machine, how to change the blade, how to push a button to put a maintenance request in, hit another button for incident reporting, or I'm low on parts, I need inventory to keep my job going, let me hit this button. And you don't see that sort of technology as you do, again, like you said, Alex, with the engineering staff. They've got all the best tech in the world, but the operators just don't have it.
So walk me through some of the issues that you run through, but then talk to me about what you do at Undesked. What is it? I know you focus on solutions like AI-powered mobile connections and computing and communication. Talk me through some of those examples that might even apply in that manufacturing example.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example of a client of ours. They have these machines. They have a lot of migrant workers. That's been a topic at SHRM a lot today. I've seen a lot of And so you got and not only that, but if you talk specifically about manufacturing, 40% national turnover rate. The person that you've got sticking on this machine today probably wasn't on the machine yesterday. So it starts right there, right? So the first thing you've got to be able to do is make sure somebody's qualified to run that machine. These are challenges that we see. So how do you do that? Well, you check into a machine, it needs to check a database. Have they seen the training video? Have they taken the training test? Have they signed off on all of those things? So now we got that done. They're up, they're operational, and Undesked can make those things happen. We have the technology to make it so you check in. It knows if you've been here. If you haven't, it makes you do these things to be sure you're going to be safe. You're going to operate the machine correctly. The next thing is, something's going to go wrong. It could be that, like I said a minute ago, you're running out of parts to make your finished goods. Maybe that your bin becomes full and you can't even make another part. You don't have a place to put it. Somebody needs to take this thing away. Maybe the machine's not running right. Maybe the parts aren't passing QC. So there's a huge array of things that can go wrong, right? You need the ability to be able to reach out and answer that question immediately. And a lot of times, again, with operators, you just don't see access to those resources to do those sort of things.
So how are you communicating? How are you pushing that out via AI? What's the nuts and bolts of it?
Yeah, so at Undesked particularly, which I think is your question, so we make an interface. It's mobilely responsive, can be put on any kind of device, and it's specific to its location. So if you're at one particular machine, there might be a tablet right there, and all the buttons that relate to that machine, of how to run that machine or the parts inventory of that machine, they're all right there. When you hit those buttons, it might be a form that you pulled up, and you fill out things on a form. It might be a video you watch. And depending on what that is, the end result might be a job assignment. So I'll give you an example like I did earlier. Someone puts a near miss in. Well, I want to trigger an assignment to the maintenance department to be due today to go overlook that. So we use AI to look for these situations, where there is an incident, there is a near miss. So that should trigger maintenance. There is low inventory. Could be off a sensor, could be off a button that triggers someone to go fill that bin up with parts. And so those are the things we look for: is what are these common workflows that are going on every day, and how do we streamline and automate them?
Do you see that with some of the folks that we're talking about in the deskless workspace, that they experience sort of the same thing that we've been experiencing in our own data at SHRM? Our recent research highlights the fact that AI, for example, and AI-powered applications are actually driving greater efficiency. 89% of the workforce says they're doing things faster, quicker, better because of AI.
Yeah.
Do you see the same thing happening with the deskless community?
Oh yeah, like the example I just used, you're running low on parts, you hit a button, and then AI can send the response to the correct person that handles the correct parts to send them to go do a job, and now you never left the machine, so there's no downtime.
Yeah.
Not only is there no downtime, but you again didn't leave the machine and you didn't walk your way into the way of a tow motor and create a safety incident. So not only are you more efficient, but you're safer. And then we see AI continually creating efficiency, continually creating safety, and it's measurable. Like you can literally watch the implementation of AI. You can watch the number of incidents go down. You can watch the productivity per man per hour go up, and it's super measurable. And it needs to be. AI has to have a business outcome. We don't need to just do AI to do AI because it's catchy, right? So there needs to be a business outcome, and it needs to be measurable, and you can see it.
So yesterday, I was fortunate enough to be on a panel with folks from Oracle and folks from ServiceNow and Atlas Cloud, and one of the things that stood out to me was we heard a lot about, and I sort of forced this question in there as the moderator of the panel, but I thought to myself, what kind of stubbed toe moments have you seen people having with the deskless community, and in particular as it relates to the integration of AI? Because nothing is ever perfect, right? There's always moments where you stub your toe. What kind of guidance would you offer HR leaders to avoid those kind of stub toe moments too?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here. I think that the term AI has just gotten so sensationalized. It's like we've got to have AI, and
Yeah.
and it's interesting, right? We got to have it. Well, for what, right? So, so what I would suggest to HR leaders is to first start when we're talking about frontline deskless environments. Like, why don't you go take a trip and talk to the deskless workers and see what they're having struggles and challenges is. We don't need to just implement AI to implement AI because it sounds cool. So what are they struggling with? Thing number one. Thing number two is like get contextual. Like go out there and watch the work being done. Don't just ask them what's going on, but don't just take their words for it because sometimes they'll say what they want to say to get what they want to get. But go watch that work and get contextual. Thing three, I would suggest if you're HR and you're wanting to implement AI, build out the workflows. Like start watching what's going on, chart out those workflows. You're looking for redundancy. You're looking for opportunities for automation. You're looking for opportunities for efficiency. But if you don't document out those workflows and you don't personally go witness that work, then what are we implementing AI for? Just because someone had something that sounded neat. So find the real problems in your business and look for AI. Don't look for AI and then go try to find a problem that it solves. Look for your problems and work from the problem to the AI, not from the AI to the problem.
I am so glad you said that. I work quite a bit with the National Academy of Sciences and or National Academies of Science, I should say. And one of the things that they actually do, they have a board that's all on the human-machine interface. And AI, as you might imagine, is the big thing that they've been studying over the last year. I work with their board chair, Emmanuel Robinson, and a buddy of mine, Fred Oswald, who's the most down-to-earth person you've ever met from UC Irvine and formerly Rice University, right? And he's been working in machine learning for the last 25 years. One of the things that they always highlight and that their work actually highlights is the need for that context, the need to understand what people are actually using it or would use it for, right? Because they actually have summarized and synthesized data across 300 different jobs and how people are using both AI, a human version of the solution, or just an AI alone version of the solution, and when they use AI plus HI, right? And one of the things that stands out is when they're using AI and HI together, it only works if they've actually taken into account the context. It's actually worse if you use it, worse than using AI by itself or HI if you don't account the context, right?
Yeah, because if you're using both and there's a dependency there, right? Yeah, 100%. And so again, the human interaction has to trigger something that's meaningful in AI. So you're looking for the problem first, not the AI solution. You can't find the AI solution until you know what the actual real world problem is.
It's almost like any good use case, right? You got to start with what the problem is, right?
Yeah, but I think a lot of people, Alex, and I think you're seeing this and everybody's seeing this. They're just so excited about AI. I had a workshop earlier today talking about deskless workforces, right? And so I got to the workshop beforehand to prep for the session and all that. And there was an AI session. There's 85 chairs and there's probably 300 people there, right? So it's a very interesting topic. So, again, I encourage all HR leaders, go find the problems. And the problems you're looking for are you're looking for redundancy. Where are we doing the same thing repeatedly? Secondly, you're looking for efficiency through automation. Where is there a task that's being done that a human is having to push multiple buttons when literally the first button, the human interaction, could have then triggered a bunch of AI instead of a bunch more human interactions? And we see that. And so these are the things you're looking for. And then the last one you're looking for, which is, sort of the classic definition of AI, is where is there something that the amount of brain power that it would take to calculate this and sort this and decide to do this is just enormous, and then you want to implement AI. So that's, my suggestion to HR is get inside of that environment, get down there with those frontline workers, look at that contextual work that's being done, and find those problems.
So let's get back to HR leaders as a kind of a group that we want to help. We want to advise in some way, right? We've got 25,000 people here, all in the HR industry in some way, shape, or form, between exhibitors and sponsors and folks who are attendees. One of the things that stands out to me is they're all looking for greater guidance on. I don't find people resisting AI anymore. What I find people doing, to your point, is looking how to adopt it and adopt it well, right? And that's a change management initiative in my
Very
mind.
much so.
The new imperative. I mean, I know we used to say change management in this industry, but it's really transformation, right?
Yeah,
Is
sure.
what we call
Digital
it.
transformation,
Yeah.
change management.
How do you guarantee that people are actually taking into account or what do you advise HR leaders to make sure that this is a strategic people initiative or strategy as much as it is a technology one?
You said a minute ago, inclusivity, like start with the frontline worker. Like if you're not solving one of their problems, how big of a buy-in do you think you're going to get from them? Right. So number one, start there. Number two, if you're implementing AI, you're doing something new. So let's not do a bunch of new things at once. Let's use a change management framework we're already comfortable with. Just because AI is a new thing and it's a new kind of change, you're probably already using a change management framework. Don't redo it just because you're implementing AI. Use a very comfortable framework that you've been used to and that's it tried and true and that your team is behind it. Third is more so than in a lot of change management, these are going to be, cross-functional projects. This isn't just going to be HR that's involved in an AI project. It's going to touch other departments. And so more so, I think than ever is transparency and collaboration have got to exist because if you're going to implement AI, it's not the same as we implement a new procedure and we got it wrong because we weren't collaborating, we weren't transparent about exactly what our goals were, and then we just go back out and we change that. This AI, so there's a lot of programming that's going to get involved. There's some pretty heavy engineering lifts that are related to this. And so this change management needs to be taken probably more seriously than a lot because the upfront investment is significant and undoing it is extremely hard. So a lot of transparency. What are my challenges going to be with this? What are we going to get out of this? And then, lastly or fourth, you gotta coach up the buy-in. You're going to have to train everybody. You're going to have to level set those expectations if you're going to get the adoption that you need. You can't just throw this thing out there and hope that it sticks. I mean, some of these workers are concerned AI is going to take their job, right? So you need to explain to them how it's not the big bad monster. Hey, this is going to empower you to do more and be more efficient, and that efficiency is going to secure your job. And so part of that training is on the AI, but part of that is also on the people side of the business about, hey, this is actually how this impacts your career here, and coach them through that. So, I feel like if you follow that framework, then you'll be in a good spot as a leader.
I also think there's an important component to what you just said, which is really ensuring that you're incentivizing people to come along on that journey, right? And the good, best leaders who are doing it in that change management framework are doing it with the aim of incentivizing people to change, right?
Right.
That's the whole purpose of it. I've heard recent examples across a variety of different communities where people are being incentivized and actually building in project work to incentivize people to learn AI, to build it into their core work, and giving people the opportunity to be creative about how they build it into their work processes and their workflows. This also makes me think a little bit about something that is sort of the hot topic of the day, the big two-word phrase that we've been unleashing here at SHRM this year at SHRM 25, which is business accretive, right? And a lot of people, want to know and want to talk about how much are we actually increasing the value, right? Accretive means you're increasing the value of your business. How much are we actually doing that? What do you see with the deskless workers and teaching them how to use AI?
Yeah, so I think to tie in a couple things that you said there, and even to go back to the previous question, like what is the business objective here? Why are we doing this project? What's going on here? And if we are successful, what are our expected measurable results, right? And then to align performance incentives, around those things for that adoption. As far as what I'm seeing in the deskless workforce, AI is new. Like just the fact to even have an infrastructure that even is possible to build AI on. I wasn't kidding when I was talking about I walk in these factories, these fast food restaurants, these hotels, all these places, they're still on pen and paper, Alex. Like the ideology of implementing AI, we're a long way from there. We can't have a train until we lay down some tracks. And paper is not the track you can build AI on. So what I'm seeing is I'm seeing a lot of these industries, that have been resistant to change. Now they know they have to adopt change and they're miles behind. So right now they're going through a term, I guess it was, you tell me how long ago, digital transformation. When was that the buzzword of the year? Was that 5 years ago? 5 years ago. So a lot of these places are just now going through digital transformation in order to be able to even look at AI. And it's, again, those frontline environments, because nobody has focused on those frontline environments the way they have those deskless or those desk environments. And so right now we're just trying to build the infrastructure out. And I won't say that's true for everybody. Like, I can take you into a couple of facilities, around the world of different things for, production, manufacturing, production, that almost everything. You've been in a Tesla factory. Well, they're definitely not going through digital transformation over there, right? They're using robots and tons of AI. There's hardly any people in those facilities. But for the most part, what's stopping AI isn't even the humans itself. It's just the utter lack of infrastructure to even build AI on. If there isn't data in a database, we can't sort it, sift it, and act upon it. Sitting on a clipboard, we're lost.
You're absolutely right. And obviously, data is near and dear to my heart as SHRM's Chief Data and Analytics Officer.
So you love paper then, right?
Listen, I'm the one that started a book. The first 3 words of my first book, I hate people. But the second sentence was, I love numbers, right? So that's defines my love of data. But and I do not hate people. I just want to offer a disclaimer, because my wife always gets mad when I say that. But one thing I will ask as a final kind of closing question for us here. And I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball, right? Because obviously I love a good kind of conversation. Where do you think AI is going to let us down?
I think it's our expectations of AI in general. I believe people have sold themselves that AI is going to solve all the problems, right? And so it's interesting that my thought of what AI would do is do my dishes, and robots in general and artificial intelligence of any sort would do my dishes and vacuum my house and mow my grass so that I could make art. But what I see a lot of AI doing is making art while I'm mowing the grass and doing my dishes, right? And so I think the expectation of AI is set just super high, that it's just going to solve everything. And so for me, that's where I think it's going to let us down. Is it's not the AI that's letting us down. It's our expectations were unrealistic. And it's really great at this point at redundant task. It's really great at being able to search 1 million websites on ChatGPT for me in like 0.3 seconds. It would have took me a year to do that research, and it's good in certain things. And people are just to put themselves under this ether that it's just great at everything because it's artificial intelligence. But it's only as good as what we tell it to do. And so our expectations that'll be not met are our own expectations, not the AI itself.
And with that in mind, I'm going to give you an opportunity to kind of give us a little bit of wisdom to HR leaders as a whole. What guidance, 30-second guidance would you offer them? What wisdom would you offer them so that they don't miss out and create a greater skills gap for deskless workers?
Yeah. So, it again goes back to, what I was saying earlier is like, it's contextual. We talked about that. So what we need to do is we need to figure out where there's the AI at. That's one thing. There's a practical use for it. And two, we had a question earlier about, and we talked about training and getting the buy-in. That's the other thing. They got to be trained, right? So number one, the AI's got to fit the thing that we're doing. It's got to solve the problem. And number two, they just need to be effectively coached, trained, bought in, and then the AI will work fine together. But if you don't make both of those investments, then it's not going to work out.
Jeremy, it was a real pleasure. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I can't thank you enough for sharing the insights that you've had in terms of Undesked and all the work that you do and you're bringing to the deskless community. I really am grateful for it.
Alex, I appreciate it. It's great to be a part of SHRM 25 and provide any guidance. I don't know how much wisdom you're going to get out of me, but to provide anything I can to the HR community and its HR leaders.
I'll stop short of calling you Yoda, but you are by far wise, my friend. And that's it for this week's episode. A big thank you to Jeremy Jacobs for sharing his experiences and insights with us.
Did you know our podcast is only one part of the AI+HI project? We also host an annual event featuring visionaries from the worlds of business, tech, and HR. Plus, we publish a weekly newsletter that includes topical articles and the latest research from SHRM, all to help you stay ahead of the trends. To sign up, just make your way to shrm.org/AI+HI. And you can also follow SHRM on social media for even more clips and stories. Like, share, and tell us how you're innovating towards a brighter future.
SHRM.